In early 1944, before the year 1944 had reached its midpoint, the vast Pacific Ocean witnessed the unraveling of an empire that had once expanded with relentless force. A storm was building across the Marianas. It was a storm made of American carrier groups, long-range bombers, advancing marine divisions, and a tightening ring of submarine patrols. Japan stood on the edge of a strategic crisis unlike anything it had faced since the beginning of the Pacific War. The American assault on the Marianas was not simply another amphibious thrust. It signaled the arrival of the powerful B-29 superfortress, a weapon that could reach the Japanese homeland and from newly captured airfields on Saipan and Tinian. Japanese military planners understood the meaning of this threat immediately. If the Marianas fell, the industrial heart of Japan would be within bombing range. The Imperial Navy would lose the central shield that protected its remaining territory. As the United States pressed forward under commanders like Raymond Spruance and Chester Nimitz, Japan realized that time was no longer a resource it could spend. American naval superiority in the Pacific had grown with astonishing speed. Advanced radar, code-breaking intelligence, mass-produced carrier aircraft, and aggressive submarine warfare had eroded the once formidable Japanese perimeter. Japanese merchant shipping was being destroyed faster than it could be replaced, causing deep shortages in petroleum and aviation fuel. Fighter pilot training programs had been shortened drastically, leaving the Imperial Navy with fewer seasoned aviators. This dire moment forced Japan to launch Operation Ago, a final attempt to reverse the course of the war. Japanese leaders planned a decisive battle that would shatter American power in the Central Pacific. They believed that if they could lure the United States naval forces into a massive carrier confrontation, they might still reclaim the initiative. Their remaining carrier fleet, including the veteran ships Shokaku and Zuikaku, was ordered into action. It was a gamble born of desperation. The goal was to halt the American advance in the Marianas, destroy the carrier forces screening the landings, and protect the Japanese homeland and from the looming threat of strategic bombing. As the Imperial Navy prepared for this monumental clash, the stage was set for a confrontation that would reshape the Pacific War. In late May 1944, as Japan prepared for what it believed would be the decisive battle of the Pacific War, the Imperial Navy ordered its remaining carrier fleet to depart from the anchorage at Taotaui in the Sulu Sea. It was a somber departure. Only a few years earlier, Japan's carrier arm dominated the vast Pacific with unmatched coordination, elite aviators, and a reputation forged at Pearl Harbor and the Indian Ocean raid. Now that same force sailed with uncertainty as fuel shortages, inexperienced pilots, and strained logistics weighed heavily on every deck. The carrier Shokaku, once a pride of the WWII, formed part of this final great sortie. Alongside her sailed her sister ship Zuikaku, the new carrier Taiho, and other vessels that made up what remained of the first Mobile fleet under the command of Vice Admiral Jisaburo Ozawa. Searchable keywords such as Pacific War carriers, Imperial Japanese Navy, and Battle of the Philippine Sea would later define this historical moment in scholarly work. The fleet's composition looked formidable on paper, yet the reality told a different story. Japan lacked sufficient refined fuel, forcing the carriers to operate at reduced efficiency. Many of the aviators on board had undergone abbreviated training. Veteran pilots lost earlier in the war could not be replaced through rushed instruction. Mechanical wear on aircraft engines was widespread due to the desperate effort to keep every possible plane airworthy. Even the mighty Taiho, Japan's newest carrier, suffered from crew inexperience in managing her advanced internal systems. As the ships left Taotaui, American submarines operating in the region had already begun to probe the area. Japanese destroyers burned precious fuel in an attempt to drive them off, yet their efforts could not conceal the fact that Japan's naval aviation power had become dangerously thin. Each carrier still possessed a substantial number of planes, but the majority of pilots lacked the hard-fought experience needed for large-scale operations. The Imperial Navy understood that if it did not act now, it would never again have a chance to challenge the rising tide of American power across the Philippine Sea. What set out from Tawi was not the undefeated armada that once shocked the world. It was a battered remnant, hoping that one monumental strike might change the outcome of the entire Pacific War. In early June 1944, as America intensified its push across the Central Pacific, United States naval commanders prepared for an enemy they knew was coming. Through breakthroughs in code breaking and the silent work of submarine patrols, the United States had gained a remarkable advantage. Intelligence officers had deciphered key Japanese communications that revealed Operation Ago. This allowed Admiral Raymond Spruance to form a defensive posture west of the Marianas while ensuring that the amphibious landings on Saipan remained protected. The real invisible shield of this strategy was the sprawling network of United States submarines positioned across the Philippine Sea. Admiral Charles Lockwood, commander of United States submarine forces in the Pacific, unleashed what many historians later called the silent net. His submarines formed long scouting lines designed to detect the movements of the first Mobile fleet. Searchable keywords including United States Navy submarines, Pacific intelligence operations, and Battle of the Philippine Sea often appear in historical analyses of this moment. The submarine line stretched across key choke point and potential approach routes. Boats like Flying Fish, Finback, and Albacore waited patiently for any sign of Japanese carriers. Their mission was simple: report the enemy, attack when possible. Provide Spruance with the information needed to intercept the Imperial Navy. Radar advances and new torpedoes had dramatically increased submarine effectiveness by mid-1944, giving American patrols a technological edge Japan could no longer counter effectively. Although the submarine net was impressive, not every boat in the region belonged to the main scouting line. Some submarines operated independently based on previous patrol routes, intelligence tips, or opportunistic positioning. One of these was the submarine USS Cavalla. Cavalla was not originally placed on the primary scouting line that Lockwood designed. Instead, she had been patrolling the Philippine Sea on her maiden war patrol under the command of Lieutenant Commander Herman J. Kostler. The United States Navy did not yet know that this positioning would become crucial. As the first Mobile fleet advanced toward the Marianas, Cavalla found herself drifting into a corridor that would soon carry some of Japan's most important carriers. Unknown to Kostler and his crew, fate was aligning with extraordinary precision. Within days, Cavalla would encounter a formation that would change the course of the Pacific War. In the late morning of June 1944, as the Philippine Sea churned quietly beneath a blazing sun, the submarine USS Cavalla continued her maiden war patrol with calm precision. Lieutenant Commander Herman J. Kostler, a disciplined officer known for his methodical approach, guided his crew through one of the most dangerous yet critical regions of the Pacific War. Cavalla carried the improved Mark 18 torpedoes and advanced radar detection equipment that gave her the ability to stalk enemy ships with deadly effectiveness. Searchable keywords including United States submarine warfare, Cavalla patrol, and Pacific carrier battles often appear in discussions about this historic encounter. The crew remained alert. Cavalla had already picked up distant signals during the early hours, and by midday, those traces sharpened into something unmistakable. Sound operators reported screws of multiple large vessels. Kostler ordered Cavalla to dive and approach cautiously. Minutes later, through the haze of the periscope lens, the massive silhouette of a Japanese carrier emerged. The vessel was the veteran carrier Shokaku, a ship that had survived the attack on Pearl Harbor, the Battle of the Coral Sea, and multiple carrier engagements across the Pacific. Now she formed part of the first Mobile fleet racing toward the Marianas in a last attempt to challenge American naval power. Kostler realized immediately that he had stumbled into one of the most valuable targets in the entire Pacific theater. Cavalla maneuvered skillfully into position, taking advantage of the confusion created by the massive carrier group and their protective destroyers. Kostler waited patiently as the Shokaku closed in, her flight deck bustling with aircraft preparing to launch. When the moment came, Cavalla fired a spread of torpedoes. Seconds later, powerful explosions ripped through the Japanese carrier. Flames burst from the hangar deck as aviation fuel ignited. Shokaku began listing as her crew fought desperately to save their ship. Additional detonations followed when gasoline stores erupted, sealing her fate. Within minutes, the proud carrier sank beneath the waves, taking hundreds of sailors and many of Japan's remaining trained aviators with her. It was a devastating blow delivered at precisely the moment Japan needed her carriers most. The sinking of Shokaku by USS Cavalla not only removed one of Japan's last veteran carriers, but also symbolized the irreversible collapse of Japanese naval aviation during the Battle of the Philippine Sea. Sometimes remembered through the searchable keyword Great Marianas Turkey Shoot due to the overwhelming American victory. Cavalla's strike contributed directly to that turning point.